Welcome to the Now and Then podcast. I'm your host, Dan McCool. Join us as we dive into the fascinating journeys of professionals across the globe who have dedicated 15 or more years to their careers. Come along as we explore how their roles have evolved, the challenges they've faced, and the wisdom they've gained along the way. I can't wait for you to hear their insights. Let's uncover the stories behind the experiences of these remarkable professionals. Welcome to the Now and Then podcast. Welcome to the Now and Then podcast. Today, our guest is Jenny Rieke. She is a teaching artist and a community arts activist. Welcome, Jenny.
Hi, glad to be here.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you. This is very exciting. We'll go ahead and get started. If you'd like to tell us a little bit about your background, what led you to becoming an artist? Was there an aha moment when you knew you were meant to be a teaching artist, community arts activist?
Well, I didn't know there was such a thing as a teaching artist, for one thing, and that came later on in my life. But as an elementary school teacher, I understood that the lens I saw everything through, all the possibilities with students, was art. And so every bit of my teaching was based on an arts approach. And so I wanted to make their learning very visible and very auditory and have it kind of surround them, because I've been a distracted student. We've all been a distracted student. And being a visual, I was always staring off at my environment. You know, if I was checked out of whatever was going on, because I was very shy, I was looking for things that caught my interest. And so often it was a boring environment, and all we had was what was coming out of the teacher's mouth or in the book. That was it. And so I kind of dedicated my teaching career of 30 years to creating an environment that even if the student wasn't paying attention to anything I was saying or doing, they could get something as a takeaway to spark their creativity, let them use their imagination, be part of. I wanted all students to feel like they're part of a learning environment. And so 30 years worth of building on that. I was teaching in all kinds of ways, but art was always my mainstay way of being with the kids. They knew they were going to get arts experiences out of me because that's how I breathed there. So that's when I knew I was a teaching artist, but I didn't know I was a teacher who happened to be an artist. So that's what I've had.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that's a valuable insight, because so often, kids are bored and distracted. I know I was in school for sure. And it just seems like the kids with a little bit more on the ball, they're the ones that are the most distracted and can end up being disruptive. And then that's you gotta keep them engaged. That's for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always had an area where kids could be creative with stuff, free junk, but it was highly organized, very, very approachable, very accessible. But the expectation was always you clean up whatever you mess up. And so there was built-in discipline with my art approach.
Right. It's not all fun and games, right? You have to be a little bit more responsible.
Responsibility for the mess you make. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question would be, how has the culture or environment of your workplace evolved over the years?
Well, I have always taught that which people have discarded if I found it to be potentially useful resource. I either immediately knew what it needed to be, or I wanted to have it in my landscape, my personal landscape, so I could teach with it. I could use it in my own art. I've always lived in a well-padded collection of stuff, but it's highly organized because the nurses who raised me taught me how to organize. And if somebody needed something, I like to be a resourceful, advocate for their ideas. Here, try this. It's fruit. You can't go wrong. All best you can have is a fail, and then you're going to learn something. So, that has never changed. It's gotten more and more organized. I've become able to say no to things once people learn that you'll catch their trash, they ease their conscience. But I don't have room for everything I've been offered. So uh, I don't have the barn I've dreamed of. I've always wanted to never go. So at any rate, now I'm a model for other people. That's what's changed is I've turned my collective space into a resource center. The people want to be teachers down the road at community college. I've invited them from the classroom right into my studio. If you see something that you are interested in trying, it's yours. I just give it to you. I don't need to make money right. I'm trying to support people in pursuing resourcefulness. I'm afraid we have a lot of people who don't know how to be resourceful. So I'm trying to cultivate resourcefulness. And I guess that's what's changed is that instead of being my internal process and always trying to defend myself about it, well, I don't need to defend it, but anyway, explain to people what it is, because most people look at what I have as chaos. And perhaps chaos could describe what I have, but I know where everything is. So I can access it, and I do access it. So that's what's changed is I've opened it up to the next generations, because I'll never live long enough to use everything.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Well, I know that I used to give you stuff, and I remember the last time you had to turn something down from me because you just didn't have room for it anymore.
I say no more than I say yes now, because I truly still kind of glutted with materials, and I need horizontal space to make my art. I still want to make art, and I still do art. So that requires things.
Yeah, but it's nice to be a resource as well at some point. That's a pretty satisfying thing. And when you reach that point in your life where you've failed often and moved on, and then you can be a resource to other people to help them maybe not make the mistakes that you had to go through. I mean, that's part of teaching as well.
Wishful thinking.
Right. Yeah. Well,
but I tell everybody who walks out of my studio with an armload of stuff, fail big, fail often, and you'll learn. If you're not failing, you're not learning anything. And I guess that's rooted. My purpose of being is help people learn. You got to fail to learn. So anyway.
Yeah. You shouldn't be afraid of taking risks, I guess. That's the bottom line, right? Yeah. So the next question would be, what technological advancements or new techniques have had the most significant impact on your daily work?
Well, learning to get to Chrome and get to Riverside. Every time I try something new, I have to learn and I have to fail. So there you go. We were late starting because I had to learn that.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't hold fast to old school thinking. I find that that's kind of a dead end, and it cuts me off. If I decide I'm not going to go there with a new technology or a new technique or a new idea, it puts up walls to my creativity. And I think I've spent my life trying to avoid walls around my creativity because I can't model it for young people is my biggest concern. I raised a son and he lived with this madness, and now he's an incredibly creative, resourceful person. I mean, he serves in many ways at his job that have nothing to do with his job description. And I think it's because he grew up with this mindset that, well, let's try this. Have you thought about that? Don't be limited by what you think you know.
Right.
So that's kind of the basis for my functioning is to stay open to ideas. When my husband says, well, you got to do this, because he's a scientist and he's got the right way, right? He knows what's going to work. And I say, well, this is my project, not yours. Thank you for your input. And I carry on with this. And what he said is in the back of my mind. And I also have a pretty firm, no, not going to go there, because that misses my point. My art has a point. I like to say something. So only I know what that is. He doesn't. And I don't expect him to embrace my way. That's not a point. I don't expect people to understand what I do as an artist, but I want people to understand that everyone has something to say. And art is a way to say it. I don't care what form the art is. You got an answer to this problem, sing it to me, beat it out in a rhythm.
Right.
Give me something that says you have something to say about it. And if a student can say something that is purely their voice, I'm going to give them an A.
Yeah, right on.
Her
Yeah,
voice is kind of the whole point of becoming a person, right? It's just
right,
if we don't have a voice, we're not fully the person we could be. So, and the voice changes. So, anyway.
right. And that's really important to grow and learn like that. I had an old boss years and years ago, and I was resisting something, and he says, Dan, it's it was probably some electrical thing, So, and he was saying, Dan, the whole point is here, you need to evolve or go extinct. And how do humans evolve? We evolve by learning and taking risks and constantly trying to move forward with new ways of doing things. And I think it holds true in art as well as as life as well.
Very
Yeah.
much, very much.
Yeah.
My favorite bumper sticker for years was "Evolve or Die."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of
I think I had that one too. Yeah. Yeah.
bottom line.
Yeah. The other one I like, I have it on my business cards actually. It's kind of a circular thing with an arrow, and the top word it says inspire, and below it says be inspired.
Yeah.
There's arrows that point to each of them, and it's a big circle, I just love that whole concept.
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet.
Yeah. So going along with that theme, can you maybe share a memorable story or experience from your early years that shows how the contrast between the way things were then and the way they are now?
Well, I kind of had to beg my way into my first stint as a teaching artist. I didn't consider myself a teaching artist, but I was kind of between gigs. I was homeschooling my son because I just couldn't bear the thought of him going off and me missing all these days with him. Then he liked hanging out with me. I was making custom garments for people. I was a seamstress and an artist. And so there was a lot going on. Dad was building guitars. It was a happening place. And my friend Dina Duke was teaching third grade in Boise. And we were very close in other ways. And I said, you're studying Native Americans, the Shoban Indians from the area of Boise. They did a lot of weaving. She said, yeah, and I haven't quite figured out how to teach the kids about weaving and the importance of it. And I'm a weaver. I'm a fiber artist at heart. And I said, well, would you consider letting me in? Well, long story short, she gave me 8 weeks, every week for 8 weeks. I got to come in with my son, and he helped. He was my aide. And we taught those kids how to weave everything from, paper strips to weaving with straws and weaving with different kinds of literal weaving. But I also showed them how to weave sounds and how to weave their bodies.
Oh, wow.
And how to weave, what the core essence of weaving is creating, a strong something or other, that could hold something. That's kind of the idea, is strength. And how do you make strength with weaving? Well, it's about the warp. And I taught them how to make a warp and how to weave into it. And I think the third graders, third grade is young. They don't have a lot of skills with their fine motors. But they were, every single one of the kids just loved when we would show up with an armload of materials and ideas and kind of turn them loose. And we would spend, I think I was there for 2 hours each time. Wow. And then when I was gone over the rest of the week, they were carrying on with what I had given them. And Dina Duke, the teacher, was just so excited about what she saw happening because the kids were highly engaged, and she could refer to weaving and craft and artisan being, all that stuff that came through as humans developed. And the Native Americans were loaded with this nature. And it's nothing new. It's open to all of us. It's old and it's new. And so that taught me that I had something to offer that teachers don't bring. Generally, teachers don't bring that way of thinking into the classroom. And I see it as starvation for students because it belongs in the classroom. If it belongs anywhere, it's with young children. And young children deserve to have those doors open. So that showed me what I needed to do. But then I went on to more years of classroom teaching. And what happened was the staff around me in the building would come to me to talk through ideas, to see if I had any resources. You know, they always knew I had something hiding in the cupboard that would serve them perfectly. And I'd have 30 of them, so they had plenty to work with. And I just found that I kind of became an anchor in a community because I was also willing to stand up and lead. I mean, I became the president of the teachers union for a reason. I was willing to say what nobody else would say. The person who's been in place for 30 years needs to be, and you know, little work. There's work to be done. And I was only in it for a year because I quit teaching. Science is the pit. They wanted me to teach them art, and I wasn't paid to teach them art. Anyway, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. You know, I think it's good to see how things have changed like that. And you know, one of the great tragedies of our education system, I think, is the reduction in the teaching of arts and music. I mean, two very important things that kids just thrive on. It opens them up to so many different possibilities and helps with critical thinking and logic and all that stuff. You know, it's not just fun and games. You know, it's a very important learning tool, I believe. But you know, luckily we have some people like you, and I think I hope we're reversing that trend. It seems like we are a little bit in the schools that they're having.
I don't know. It's hard to say because
Okay.
teachers in this country don't get the respect that they deserve for the effort they put forward. And now we're kind of late in that game. And I live right down the road from the community college, CBC. And I went there and I was willing to set up a scholarship. I will encourage this behavior if people who want to be teachers want to study arts integration and be serious about it. And I'll put money toward that. I will support them with some money. Well, I came to find that they're excited about getting more money and, you know, more scholarships and all that, but there was nothing behind. I can give money for a scholarship, but nobody was teaching back. That's not part of what we do here. And so I had the conversation, well, do you want this to be part of what you do? They were all excited about it. And they said, well, you're the expert. What do you have? Well, I wasn't looking for a job. I was
right. Yeah.
And as it turned out, I went into the classroom several times, several ways, and talked with teacher education students and the faculty and took a carload of stuff. I mean, I did what I could to inspire them and hook them, but I didn't see them often enough to really make a difference. I don't know. I got a lot of thank yous at the end because I took a place I'd never been. But that dip in and out is not what it's about. It's about sustained learning and effort. And I don't have a job. I'm adjunct at CBC, but I'm not teaching right now because they are in tumult. And so I want to do that, but I don't need a job. So I'm kind of in a holding pattern. I said, I'm here for you. If your students need resources, please send them my way. I gave them my address, studio. I will open the doors for you and you can use me. But I'm not sure how to support a system that doesn't go there at all. And it's called arts integration. It's not about having something beautiful on the wall. That's it. I'm good. I'm done. I've described it to them. I've told them about the artist. That's part of it. But an aesthetic education has to be a daily effort and pointing out the beauty in life. If a teacher isn't in charge of that, I don't know who is, because what parent who's struggling now is going to see that their kids have an aesthetic education?
Yeah, that's a tough one, especially in modern life, but everyone is so busy. You know, there's so many things demanding our attention. It's hard to stop and smell the roses sometimes, you know,
Exactly. And the
or look
teacher
at the
has
beauty
kids
that
all
surrounds
day.
us.
If they can't take the kids outside and show them what the bugs are doing, show them how the seasons are changing, that's what a teacher is built to do. And so I got highly involved in science, art, as a leader,
Mm-hmm.
showing teachers how you can teach science through art.
Right.
You're not adding on anything. You're simply
Right.
changing your modality, and you don't have to be an artist to do that. You can open
Right.
doors without being an expert. And that's teachers want to feel like they're expert.
Right.
And if I could help teachers understand that you can become expert, but it's only by practice. It's just like art, right? You get better
Right.
at what you do as an artist by practicing. And
Right.
so it's
And
a
it's
frustration. Go ahead.
it's like teaching versus preaching. It's the the hands-on aspect where you can be the resource and open the door and then hope people will or encourage them to walk through. But ultimately, it's their choice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
not enough to get out a poem once a month and talk about the poem, because I don't know if you remember your high school days with poetry. You try to dissect it and break it into pieces and make
Mm-hmm.
sense, analyze it deeply. Well, poems aren't built that way necessarily to me.
Not always.
It
No.
either triggers something or it doesn't. And
Right.
teachers can teach kids how to use poetry, to issue
Right.
forth their own poetry, because we've all
And,
got it. It's just,
right.
it gets shut down.
And I think that's why my favorite form of poetry is the haiku, because it's so short and simple and often vague, So you have to kind of give it your own twist there. It's so open to interpretation, and all art is like that in my opinion. It should be, at least. It's what you bring to it as much as what the artist delivers.
Exactly.
So that's the end of part 1 of my interview with Jenny Rieke, a teaching artist and community arts activist. Tune in next week for part 2. Thanks so much for listening.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Now and Then podcast. If so, then subscribe, like, follow, throw money, do whatever it is that you do to show support. We really appreciate it. Stay curious and carpe diem.